No, something that I wish people knew more about. Something that people have a lot of misconceptions about. I personally probably do myself. I'm not the best educated, but I've been getting there, right? Is the two things of sex and gender, how people think they're a binary. But many biologists and neurologists, and I believe that the majority of them in today's time, believe they're not a binary. I believe they're not a binary and how they work. Now, at least for human brains, the bits that make you diverse sexually, in my opinion, from what I've looked at, are not, well, to a degree, they're dimorphic, but mostly they're monomorphic, which means they're same mostly from different sexes. Now, your brain could have actual physical changes based on the brain matter, which is from the hormones you take. So, that's not just what sex you're born as well, but taking hormones can also change your brain matter. This can change the size and shape, how puffy your brain is, but mentally, emotionally, and intelligently, it's all the same. Right? And as for what people feel, yes, there are more common bits, and I will say that the way people feel emotions, their thinking patterns, the way they work sexually, their sexuality, they're on a spectrum, sure, and they do have more common bits for people who are cis on both sides of the spectrum, but they aren't directly linked. They can change based on thought or look or self view or interaction or experience or emotion or something that happened, where they're not locked on their respective side of the spectrum, where they can go from their side to the middle to the opposite side as of a spectrum, where I find myself thinking more, my brain working more like woman, right? But there's no such thing as male or woman brain. They think differently based on experiences, and I do think a bit on hormones. But experiences, some of the changes I have felt ever since have been something respective of more what a cis female would feel, more than what a man would. Where my sex drive is absolutely plummeted to zero, where I don't get spontaneously. It only happens when thinking about people or interacting them in a very close bond sense. My bits down there don't even work the same, where I feel my little hangy bit is pretty much useless, I would say, because in the rare occasion I do feel anything down there, it's at the back, right? For, and I hope YouTube doesn't go crazy, penetration. And that's because my brain has been wired differently. This bit on the front, it doesn't even serve me anymore. It's completely useless, and I honestly think that I would do better with the opposite set of organs because of the way my brain's been wired. They don't even look right on me, I feel. Right? The way I've come to think emotionally and everything, I've been way more emotional, but very happy. The word probably for it, joyful, euphoric, all sorts of things. But from my perspective, this is why your brain is not just one or the other thing. It's not a binary. Anybody can think anywhere. Somebody can think more like a woman. And I think that makes them more like one if they think identically like one. Like if you take away every single bit and put them as a brain in a jar, then what are they? Because now they have no anatomy, they're just thoughts. So if they think identically or very similarly to a woman, then I think they are one. And that's their perspective. But also, but also, studies show that people, well, trans women, not people who are posing, that their brainwaves and the think like the thought patterns light up more similarly than like to a cis female than their actual biological sex. And at least to me, that proves that what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling is valid. But that's only the mental aspect. What about your body? Now, a lot of people think sex, so what gender is what you identify with, how you act. Now, I'm pretty sure gender is much of a social construct. Western society believes you have to dress a certain way or look a certain way that is made up socially. Many civilizations in the past, you could dress however you wanted, or the way you dressed or looked differently, or they might even have like two-spirit people, a separate gender, or Hindu people, etc. They might accept different things. And these things are valid because people can actually feel this way. Actually, something I should have emphasized as well before is traditionally when you take these things away, like when you put gay people through a gay camp, or the study of left-handedness where they stop demonizing it and all of a sudden they're gone up. This is because people don't stop feeling these things. When you tell them that it's not real or tell them to go away, they bury it. And if you think in the form I want to be, that they're feeling ill, then you should see them when they're hiding themselves and having to play a character. When they're coming out like this and being themselves, they're not playing a character. They're generally being themselves based on how their brain chemistry is formed and how they view themselves, how they interact. When you tell them to act a certain way, they start to play a character and hide who they really are. If anything's going to make anybody depressed, it's the sort of stuff and violence they face. Violence that we've seen towards groups in the past, like Jewish people, people of other religions, people of different skin colors, nationalities, sexualities, how they had to hide themselves. Those things, they don't just go away. They don't just start thinking a separate way. You're taking them away from themselves and not giving them the right to feel as themselves. Right. Those people are actually mentally female. But now they've got that out of the waters, I would like to explain the physical aspect of it. Sex isn't male, and it definitely... this sounds stupid. Sex isn't male and isn't female. It's not one or the other, but it's a spectrum between male and female, masculine and feminine. Now, we can usually see this in how people's voices might be, or their sounds, or how they look, or how many feminine traits they have, their height. Now, that's because they vary between male and female, but those are usually within margin of error. What about more drastic things? Now, people think sex is either male or female within just those spectrums, but there exist people in between, which you call intersex people. Now, people think that your anatomy makes up for what sex you are, or your chromosomes, or just your hormones, or all at the same time. But that is absolutely absurd, because what about Swyer syndrome, where somebody has XY chromosomes? They're chromosomally male, but they have female bits. Female hormones. They're bits. They have full tubes and ovary that can reproduce. They think they're a female. They act like one. They think like one. But chromosomally, they're not. What would they be? Right? So already we've dislinked one component, and you can see these are made out of several bits. What about gene mutations where, maybe people might have male chromosomes and male bits, but for some reason their hormones all of a sudden change? Or maybe people who have sex reversal syndrome where maybe to hormones or genetics or anything, that their body starts to shift maybe hormonally in a different direction, or the genitalia that they were given starts to shift and look like another one. Where do you put these people? There's all sorts of ones, like somebody who has male genitalia but for some reason has a uterus and tubes that are pretty much functional or half dead. People who have the outside bit and a canal of a woman's bits, but they have testes in place of where their where their tube would be. Where do you place these people? As you can see, it's made up of all several bits. And while you probably could ignore it if there was one or two people, that still means it's not a binary. These people exist. And in fact, there's 150 million people. Have you ever seen 150 million people, let alone a million? I don't even think, like, the most we've had is probably a few million in places like stadiums. 150 million is a lot to ignore. These people change. Their body could change over time. They could have second sex traits that make them change. And these people, they have multiple parts that make up male or female. And they aren't directly tied to either one. They're on a spectrum. A spectrum made up of the colors of all the different bits. This is their sex, at least. Gender is mental. So, also, if this means that at least sex-wise and gender-wise, people are not binary, but a whole spectrum, and that spectrum can vary late in life, here's another thing. If people feel and think in a certain way, gender-wise, that their body feels different, whether they're masculine, feminine, or they feel like they don't fit, like non-binary, right? If intersex people do exist and they're based on several things and sex is based on hormones and your anatomy, then it would be not just that, but maybe the changes in how their stuff works based on their experience is already one. That is already one bit. The way they alter their body with hormones, that makes them hormonically female. They're not a male in that sense anymore. If they lose their testes, if they go on T blockers, this sort of stuff, that those things, even stuff like progesterone that you have as an addition to stuff like estrogen, that gives you even more traits. You get a pair of titties. Those things actually formed. They aren't just makeup. Those things are there. They made you more feminine, more of a female. But also, well, you see, this is the argument of why nobody's locked that these procedures, when you have hormones, you become hormonically female. Actual parts of your body, and vice versa for the other spectrum of people, actually morph into something that looks like something different, right? When they have bottom surgery, it's not, some of it, yes, cosmetic, but a lot of it is built to actually function like that, and you would agree probably something that functions and looks like something is very close. So those people aren't phonies. They are closer to cis women than biological females as well. So that's another part. But this doesn't just mean there's people who are born male, female, somewhere in between on the spectrum, people that might think like it, because you don't need to have these things as well to be one, right? Or even to start. You don't need to have surgery or any of that to be woman, because a lot of womanhood is a social construct made by people. The way you dress and look and all of that, that is made up by people. And in my perspective, it changes on culture or where you're from. The fact is that you don't have to listen to people or something that it's basically just made up telling you how you should act. You can act however the damn hell you want. Nobody's saying you can't. If your brain functions and feels more like one, Don't do it for attention, but if you actually feel this way, that you're not a poser, that you're valid and you actually feel this way. And also, a lot of people, even within the trans community, think if you don't look or you don't become hormonally or physically or look like, then you're not. But people are in all sorts of situations or like all sorts of things. How it is based off how you feel. And you shouldn't let anybody actually tell you that. And this is the realization I've come to, that these things, even scientifically, since the 70s, have not been a binary. Have been very interchangeable and have been scientifically proven to work, to be a thing, not to be a mental illness, but to want to be yourself. So, as for all of those uneducated people out there who come and they attack you, who make you feel like you should bury yourself and play a character that you're not, you should not listen to them because they don't have any care in the world for others. They might have some, but definitely not for your crowd. They wouldn't have any sympathy for you or want you in the true form that you are or want to be. So, in my perspective, you can be what you want. These things aren't locked down, and it's completely valid to feel this way. And it's so sad that people don't agree with it, or let people be themselves, that they follow social constructs that have been completely made up to demonize other people, or they attack people on the basis of faith. You shouldn't attack anybody based on your beliefs. You should respect them. It's so sad to see, but at least that's my perspective. I think I've probably missed a decent amount, but it's my thoughts and the thoughts that led to me being validated to come out this way. So, if I mentioned anything wrong or anything you might want to touch up on or correct, I doubt anybody's going to watch this. I would absolutely love for somebody to leave a comment because, honestly, and this is not an illness, because coming this way has brought me a lot of joy, more joy than I've ever felt. I felt at home, like I can act like myself, right? And at least in my brain, I don't know why anybody would be so evil to tell somebody how they should act or what they should be. That is disgusting. You should absolutely be yourself. But yeah, there you go.